All right, so today we are diving deep into Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now.
Ooh, a classic.
It is. It is. And you know what? I think everyone's heard of this book at least.
Yeah.
Everyone kind of throws it around,
Yeah.
and says, oh, this book changed my life. So we're going to see if it lives up to the hype.
Okay.
We're going to try to cut through all that spiritual jargon
Yes.
and see if there are actually any nuggets of wisdom in there that,
Yeah.
that you can actually use.
Love it.
So think of this deep dive like we pre-chewed this dense philosophical steak so you can enjoy a nice, juicy burger of insight.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Thanks.
Yeah, Tolle can be a little intense sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think his core message is really simple and really powerful. And he starts by sharing his own story
Okay.
about a time in his life where he was just so miserable he couldn't stand to be himself.
Yeah.
And he actually literally had the thought, I can't live with myself any longer.
Wow. I mean, I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
Like that feeling of just your own thoughts are your worst enemy.
Right, exactly.
So I'm curious, what did he do? Did he find a therapist, new hobbies? What was his next step?
So that's where things get interesting.
Okay.
He realized that there was this separation between like the I who was suffering
Okay.
and the self that seemed to be like the cause of the suffering.
Interesting.
And this led him to have a profound spiritual awakening.
Oh, here we go. Spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
Did he join a cult, start wearing robes? What happened?
No, not quite.
Okay.
It was more of an internal shift.
So-
He describes it as this feeling of like falling into a void,
Oh, wow.
which was followed by this incredible sense of peace and like the world was totally new. He talks about waking up the next morning, hearing a bird chirping, and it was like he had never actually heard a bird sing before.
Oh.
Everything was just vibrant and alive.
So it was less about like the outward appearance and more about this realization that he wasn't just his thoughts.
Exactly.
And that kind of opened him up to this whole new way of experiencing the world.
Yeah, that's a key point.
Yeah.
And Tolle believes that most of our suffering comes from us being trapped in our minds, constantly replaying the past, worrying about the future, and we end up missing the now.
Right. Like you're scrolling through your phone while you're eating, and then you suddenly realize you didn't even taste your food.
That's a great example.
Yeah. Or, you're so busy worrying about a presentation that you're going to give that you missed out on a fun conversation with a friend.
Totally. Yeah, perfect examples.
Yeah.
And it's not about never thinking or planning for the future.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that the mind is a tool, and when it's in control, that's when the problems arise.
It's like letting a toddler drive a car.
Exactly.
Not good.
No.
So being present means being more aware of what's happening right now,
Yes.
inside and outside of ourselves. But what happens when right now kind of sucks?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah, like, what about those days when everything feels hard?
Yeah,
You just want to stay in bed.
right.
Like, what do we do then?
That's where this idea of the pain body comes in.
Okay. Pain body.
He describes it as like this accumulation of past emotional pain that we carry around with us.
Oh, that sounds heavy.
Yeah, it's almost like a separate entity that can take over and kind of dictate our reactions and our mood.
So is that like that grumpy inner voice that's always like, you're not good enough?
Yeah.
Things will never get better.
Yeah, exactly. And the pain body just thrives on negativity.
Yeah.
And it can even create situations to keep itself alive.
Wait, really?
Have you ever noticed, like, when you're in a bad mood,
Yes.
you tend to attract more negativity?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's like when you miss your train, then you spill your coffee on yourself, and it's just like, well, the rest of the day is going to be terrible.
Right, exactly. So that could be the pain body in action.
Okay, so the pain body,
Yeah.
we all have it.
Yeah.
Not a good thing. Okay, so what do we do?
Well, Tolle says it's like you think you know someone really well, and then suddenly they turn into this completely different, unpleasant person.
Oh, wow.
And that's kind of how the pain body can feel when it takes over.
Okay.
But here's the key. By simply becoming aware of it, by observing it without judgment, we can start to detach from its grip.
Okay, so step one, notice when it's happening,
Yes.
when the pain body is hijacking our thoughts and our feelings.
Right.
But how do we actually do that? Like, do we have to meditate?
Yeah.
Do we have to chant? Like, what's the secret sauce here?
That's a great question. And that is what we are going to get into right after.
No. We're not doing that.
Okay.
We're not doing a break. We are staying right here
Okay.
in the now.
I love it.
Okay, so let's dive into that.
Yeah.
How do we deal with this pain body?
Okay. So how do we deal with this pain body?
It's easy to say, like, become aware,
Right.
but what does that even mean in real life?
So think about it like this. Have you ever like gotten so caught up in a movie that you forgot you were watching a movie.
Totally.
You laughed, you cried, you jumped in your seat.
Yes.
And then the credits roll, the lights come on, and you're back in reality.
Right.
So that's what awareness is all about.
Okay.
Like realizing you are not the movie, you are the observer.
So instead of getting swept away by our thoughts and feelings, it's like we need to create some distance.
Exactly.
Like stepping back from the screen.
Yeah, and Tolle offers some simple practices to help us do this.
Yep.
He suggests like asking yourself questions like, what's going on inside me right now? Or is there any joy or ease in what I'm doing? It's about tuning into your internal state without judgment.
You know what? This reminds me of something I've been trying lately. When I feel really stressed or overwhelmed, I try to just like focus on my senses.
Nice.
Like really pay attention to like the feeling of my feet on the ground or the taste of my coffee.
Yeah.
And it sounds really simple.
Yeah.
But it actually helps me break free from that mental spiral.
That's a great example. And it really aligns with one of Tolle's key ideas.
Okay.
Which is that the present moment is our only true point of access to peace and joy. He says, when the compulsive striving away from the now ceases, the joy of being flows into everything you do.
The joy of being. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
But honestly, sometimes being just feels kind of blah.
Yeah.
Like, doing the dishes, paying bills, commuting to work. Like, where's the joy in that?
Well, I think that's where we kind of get tripped up by our expectations.
Okay.
We think joy needs to be this big dramatic experience like winning the lottery or going on a tropical vacation.
Right.
But Tolle is suggesting that true joy is more subtle. It's in the simple act of fully experiencing whatever you're doing.
So it's not about the activity itself.
Right.
It's about the quality of attention that we bring to it.
Exactly.
Okay, like I may not live scrubbing the toilet, but I can still appreciate like the feeling of the warm water in my hands, the satisfaction of making something clean.
Yes,
Excellent.
exactly. And that shift in perspective is so powerful.
Yeah.
Because when you're fully present, even mundane tasks can become infused with this sense of peace and even, dare I say it, joy.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together. But I'm guessing there's more to this power of now thing, right? What about things like relationships, work, all the messy stuff of life? Can this present moment awareness really help us navigate all that?
That's a great question and one we should definitely explore. So let's dive into how this whole being present thing works in the real world.
Right, because it's easy to feel peaceful when you're meditating on a mountaintop.
Right.
But what about when you're stuck in rush hour traffic
Yeah.
or dealing with a difficult boss? Like, how does this apply?
Yeah, that's where Tolle's concept of surrender comes in.
Surrender.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like that word can be a little loaded.
I know.
What do you mean?
Yeah, he's not talking about like giving up or becoming passive.
Okay.
It's more like he's describing this profound shift in consciousness.
Okay, I'm listening. So what does surrender look like in real life?
Yeah, it's like, think of it as accepting what is without resistance. It's like realizing you can't control the waves,
Okay.
but you can learn to surf.
Ooh, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So it's about accepting what we can't change and then focusing our energy on what we can.
Exactly. Exactly. It's about letting go of the need to control everything and just choosing to flow with life's ups and downs.
Okay, I can get on board with that, but how do we surrender to things like pain or suffering? I mean, isn't it natural to want to avoid those things?
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But Tolle argues that a lot of our suffering is actually caused by our resistance to what is. And he uses this great analogy to illustrate this. So imagine a butcher and a customer comes in and asks for the best piece of meat.
Okay.
And the butcher replies, every piece of meat I have is the best.
Okay.
There is no piece of meat here that is not the best.
Okay, that's an interesting one.
Right. So it's like the butcher is seeing the inherent value in everything, accepting it as it is.
Yeah.
And that acceptance doesn't mean we don't strive for better things. It just changes the energy behind our actions.
Okay.
Instead of pushing against reality, we're aligning ourselves with it.
Okay, this surrender thing is starting to make sense. Right. But how does it apply to something like relationships? Can we really just surrender to a partner who's driving us crazy?
Right. So it's not about passively accepting bad behavior,
Okay.
but it is about shifting our perspective. So Tolle suggests that relationships are like mirrors,
Oh.
reflecting back to us our own patterns and unconscious beliefs.
Okay, so instead of trying to change our partner, We should be looking at what the relationship is teaching us about ourselves.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's about recognizing that true change comes from within,
Yeah.
not from trying to force our partner to be someone they're not.
This is pretty mind-blowing stuff. It's like the relationship isn't about finding someone to complete you. It's about using the relationship as a tool for like self-discovery and growth.
You got it.
Yeah.
And that's where true intimacy and connection come from.
Wow, this has been a lot to digest.
I know, right?
The pain body, the power of the present moment, this concept of surrender.
Yeah.
But there's one big question that keeps popping up in my mind. What about all the things we can't control?
Oh, yeah.
Like illness, loss, even death.
Right.
How does Tolle's philosophy address those bigger life challenges?
That's an important question. And it's one that we should definitely explore further, so.
Hold that thought, everyone. We'll be right back to tackle those tough questions in the final part of our deep dive. All right, so we're back, and I feel like we got to tackle the big stuff.
Okay, yeah.
We've been talking about finding peace in the present moment.
Yeah.
But what about when life throws us those curveballs that we can't control?
Right.
You know, like
Right.
loss, heartbreak, even our own mortality.
Yeah.
Does Tolle have anything to say about that?
He does. He does. And it really goes back to that core idea that, we are not our thoughts.
Okay.
We are not our emotions. We are not even our bodies. He suggests that our true essence is something that he calls being, and that this being is beyond like the limitations of time and space.
So it's like that part of us that remains unchanged,
Yes.
even as everything around us is constantly shifting and changing.
Yes. Think of it like the stillness at the center of the storm.
Okay.
And connecting with that stillness, with that sense of being, is what allows us to face even the most difficult experiences with a sense of peace.
But how do we access that stillness?
Yeah.
Especially when we're in the midst of pain or grief.
Right.
It's easy to talk about being in the abstract, but what about when life gets real?
Right. That's where the practice of presence becomes so crucial.
Okay.
Tolle would say that even in the midst of suffering, there's always the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that present moment is always filled with life.
Yeah.
He encourages us to like find the aliveness within,
Yeah.
even when it feels like everything is falling apart.
That makes me think of those moments after a loss. When you suddenly notice a beautiful sunset
Yeah.
or hear a bird singing, and it's like, for a moment, the pain lifts.
Right.
And you feel this sense of connection to something bigger than yourself.
Exactly. And those moments are reminders
Yeah.
that even in like the darkest of times, there's always a spark of light, a glimmer of hope.
Okay.
And by cultivating our awareness, we can learn to tap into that light more and more frequently.
This all sounds very profound,
Yeah.
but I have to admit, I still struggle with the fear of death. Is that just my ego trying to cling to this earthly existence?
It's natural to fear the unknown.
Yeah.
But Tolle sees death as part of this illusion of separation that's created by the ego. He says, because we identify so strongly with our physical bodies, we fear the loss of those bodies.
Right.
But he suggests that when we connect with that deeper sense of being, we
Right.
realize that we are not limited to our physical forms.
So it's like realizing that the wave might crash, but the ocean remains.
I love that. And it's a comforting thought, isn't it? It's like realizing that even though our physical bodies will eventually die, there's a part of us that continues,
Okay.
that's connected to something much vaster and more eternal.
Wow. That's a beautiful way to think about it. It's like realizing that death isn't an ending.
Yeah,
It's a transition into something else.
exactly. And by embracing the present moment,
Yeah.
by cultivating awareness and surrendering to the flow of life, we can move through this world with a greater sense of peace and purpose,
Yeah.
knowing that we're part of something much larger than ourselves.
This has been an incredible journey into the power of now.
Yeah, it really has.
We've explored some deep concepts,
We did.
the pain body, surrender, the joy of being, and even the nature of death.
Right.
But the takeaway for me is this. True peace isn't something that we find out there in the world. It's something that we cultivate within.
I couldn't agree more. And the beauty of it is that the present moment is always available to us.
No matter what's happening in our lives, we can always choose to come back to this breath, to this moment,
Yeah.
and find a sense of peace and clarity.
So the question for all of you listening is this. What can you do today to bring more presence and awareness into your life? How can you tap into that power of now? And if you're curious to learn more, we highly recommend checking out The Power of Now for yourself.
This is a good one.
And we will see you on the next Dip Dive.
See you next time.